Welcome to Talking Point from the Church's Fellowship for Psychical and Spiritual Studies.
Before Birth and After Death. Evelyn Capel. The Reverend Evelyn Capel was a student of Rudolf Steiner's thought and was ordained as the first woman priest of the Christian community in Britain in 1939. This article appeared in the June 1989 edition of the Christian Parapsychologist Journal, and may reflect the language and attitudes of the time in which it was written. Responsibility for opinions expressed herein rests solely with the author, and such opinions must not be taken to represent those of the CFPSS. It is said of Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews, John 3, that he came to Jesus by night. It is not necessary, nor appropriate, to picture such a dignified gentleman creeping through the alleyways of Jerusalem in the dark to find the person whom he sought. The deeper meaning of their encounter is made clearer by interpreting it to mean that he met the wisdom of Christ in sleep. Each of us has that which Alice Meynell described so well as a day mind and a night mind. The day mind is better known, because it shines with the light of intelligence, but the night mind is more open to higher cosmic thought. When awake, Nicodemus spoke in terms of the law like the well-trained Pharisee that he was. But the greater ideas moving in the thought life of the universe, known in the mind of God himself, he apprehended in the deeper wisdom of sleep. He is pictured in the Gospel as a man of two minds, the one intellectual and the other working with spiritual insight. That which Christ said to him in sleep could be comprehended by his greater, more cosmic power of understanding. It is just this power of insight with which the question of the pre-existence of the human soul before birth has to be approached. To compare sleeping and waking with dying and being born is instructive. It is common experience to discover that one can bring wisdom out of sleep. Hence the value of the proverbial advice to sleep on a problem. Rudolf Steiner, whose work in spiritual science can take the mind far into the spiritual realities, spoke of Christianity being illumined in the life of sleep differently from the experience in waking life. It is even thinkable that someone who is not a professing Christian by day could apprehend the real presence of Christ in his sleep state. It is advisable to keep an open mind nowadays about who is and who is not a Christian. If this is so for the life of sleep, why should not there be similar experiences brought from the life before birth? The condition of sleep can be similar for the person on earth to that which he has known before he was born. It can lead to deeper impulses of wisdom in the human soul. Examples that this is so can be gathered from many conversations with young children. They may be ignorant of the ways of this world, but they can speak wisely about the cosmic experiences hidden in their hearts. They do not need instruction about the mysteries of birth and death and time and eternity. For this reason, small children do not need to be spared the experiences of life which are cosmic, such as birth and death. One experience is held in common by waking up and being born. They lead the human souls out of the world where wisdom is gathered, into that in which the will can go into action. However vivid dreams may be in the state of sleep, no one wakes up to find that he has done any work or performed any action while he was asleep. When the soul has come down into the body, the energy of will flows through his limbs. He can see himself reflected in any work or any action. Just as the sleeping soul wakes up from being inspired by wisdom to the condition in which he can act, so the unborn soul lives with wisdom until, born into the physical body, he finds the will to action. When considering the matter of pre-existence, we tread theological ground which has been forbidden for centuries to orthodox members of the churches, whether they are Catholic or Anglican. Only the heretics of previous times ventured upon this ground of thought. But times have changed. The teachings of the old churches remain the same, but there is such a thing as the history of thought. There are ideas that have been expelled from the human mind for certain periods, Regardless of their value, they return at a future time, when the forces of consciousness are able to grasp them. It is a study in itself to trace the often tragic history of such ideas. A long time ago, in the development of Christianity, a momentous judgment was passed at the Fifth Ecumenical Council of Constantinople in the year AD 653. It is recognized that the early Church Fathers knew of the journey of the human soul out through the gate of death and back through the gate of birth. They were able to believe that the soul which journeys between birth and death and can recall memories of its lifetime, takes another journey through the universe, through the world beyond birth and death. They had knowledge of the whole cycle of human existence. But Christian minds were plunged into a new kind of ignorance through the attack made on this knowledge at the Fifth Council of the Church. It forbade belief in that which had sustained the souls of the early fathers. A kind of mental darkness came down over the minds of Christians when it became right for them to believe that the human soul only begins to exist when the body emerges at birth. The pre-existence of the soul was swallowed up in a darkness of mind that still obscures modern thinking today. It raises the question of whether in fact all souls are born unformed and blank, or whether they are all individual and wise at the hour of birth. The question is important in the sphere of education. Likewise, it raises the problem of heredity. If there is no existence for the individual soul before birth, then the influence of the heredity transmitted by the parents will become so great as to obscure the influence of the eternal soul in thought and action. Each person would have to admit to being a chip off the old block and nothing further. There would be no room left for the exercise of true individuality and no opportunity to stand clear of the pressures of family, nation, and race. Rudolf Steiner was able to meet this problem in the same way that he was able, as a scientist of the spirit, to handle the matter of what sleep means in the development of mind in people today. He has added to our theological concepts the idea of the soul's journey, after death, and before birth through the temples of the spirit, through the many mansions of the heavens. They are represented to us in our life on earth in the constellations of the stars to be seen when we look at night into a clear sky. The shining stars are spiritual signposts to the divine worlds in the heavens, from which we have descended at birth and to which we return at death. Just as a star was a signpost of the Magi by which they found Bethlehem and the Christ child, so, on the other side of death, will the stars be signposts for us all on our journey through the many mansions of the heavens. How can we be sure that this is so? A certain lifting of the darkness spread for centuries over human minds has taken place in this century. There is evidence for it in the conversations frequently to be heard among small children. This is another example of the wisdom, Luke 10:31, revealed to babes whilst it is still hidden from the wise. Each generation of children entering the world in modern times retains more of the memories related to the life before birth than their forefathers have long been able to do. Very few parents today truly regard the souls of their children as unwritten pages on which their elders will be able to write. They could not live long with such an illusion. But can the utterances of small children be evidence? Is not this just an experience of real life? Again, the experience is encountered of what we all can observe within our own life of soul, if observation and thought reach a deeper level than that which often satisfies the modern person. Each one can make an exercise for himself out of the following question: what is the content of my faith? How did I come by it? The distinction between faith and knowledge is an old problem of theology. In the work of Rudolf Steiner, if it is acceptable as a step forward in modern wisdom, the means of overcoming this distinction is to be found. But only those who are pioneers in thought can expect to have arrived properly in our modern consciousness. For most people the assumption still exists that I can have faith beyond the area of mind in which I can assume knowledge. Whether a person of today has thought this out or not, each one carries within his heart an amount of faith on which his confidence can rest. There are no general assumptions to be made today, so that each one person will be finding his own kind of faith. But how is he able to do this? His intelligent thinking will allow him to accept many contradictory thoughts, but they are not the substance of his faith. When in his heart a person recognizes a certain truth as real to himself, whatever other people may believe, how has he found this experience of truth more convincing than his intelligent opinions are? How does he apprehend that on which he founds his faith? What happens is this: the powers of mind are reaching back behind the stage of early life, when intelligence began to appear in personal experience. They are contacting that which is outside the ordinary ability to remember. They are going back to the secrets which a person has known before he was born. The great living ideas of the universe surrounded the eternal soul before it entered life in the body. They are the ideas which uphold the universe. They are the divinely fashioned truth. The eternal soul has acknowledged them in the past and brought this knowledge down to earth. It is the touchstone by which each person tests what is real and true, and therefore sustaining for his heart in the confusion of his earthly experience. This is in fact the faith that lives more deeply in him than that which with intelligence he calls knowledge. That which upholds our faith from below amid the trials of life, is not our intelligent thought, but our perception of a greater reality, one in which ideas can be real. This we have known before we were born, and it is left to us as an inheritance from the higher state from which we have descended. Other evidence from experience points to the life before birth. Every human being carries in himself a reflection of the universal pattern of what is human. The way in which this is expressed in the Bible is to say that man is made in the image of God. It is to be recognized in ourselves and likewise in other people. Nevertheless, two individuals are never really alike. Each one of us carried variations on the universal pattern in his own nature. The person who is going to develop on earth is being prepared before the child is born. In the process of growing up, the child will be influenced by the people around him. But much more powerful will be the original influences which shaped him before his existence here began. If to the observation of how earthly influences combine to form a person, we think of the heavenly influences, the universe of the stars will then have to be considered. The soul which descends to earth when it takes on a body has known the temples of the stars from inside. They appear from the point of view of the earth to be objects of an external nature. But they are centers of creative influence for the pilgrim's soul taking its way from one to the other before it descends to unite with its body on earth. There is no such thing in the universe as a self-made man. In this world a person may aim at commanding his own circumstances, but before birth he was the creature of the heavenly beings who worked from the stars. It is not necessary, when considering the mystery of where we have come from, to seek an utterly unknown world. We are not entirely cut off from our origins simply by being born, just as we are not quite cut off from the person we are now, by going through the gate of death. There is a change from one point of view to another, from one place of experience to another. We, being human, absorb the whole cosmic picture into ourselves when we journey from one existence to another and find ourselves united with the powers of the universe before birth and after death. When we emerge into a separate existence in this world of earth, we achieve selfhood. When in earlier ages there was greater cosmic knowledge, the stars were honored as temples for the heavenly beings of the 9 hierarchies, through whom the will of God is active. Much of such knowledge has become traditional, but in our time it should come out of the past into the present. In new and future times, human people will not be able to realize who they are unless they find their living, actual relationship to the activities of the heavenly beings of the hierarchies. The angels, the archangels, and all the company of heaven in their 9 ranks have tended to become only symbols in modern times. In consequence, the heavens tend to become blank and empty. The doctrine of the hierarchies, which was entrusted to the care of the person writing under the name of Dionysius the Areopagite early in the history of Christianity, would be in need of resurgence. The modern thinker who has found the means of accomplishing this is Rudolf Steiner. Perhaps one could say that it was necessary in human history that it should be overlooked, because human souls had to find their independence. The process might be compared to that which children pass through as they grow up to become young men and women. They learn to leave the shelter provided by the parents and to take responsibility for themselves. Nowadays, this is called leaving home. By comparison, it can be suggested that mankind as a whole was directed to leave the shelter of the heavens and arrive at independence by forgetting the guidance given once by the heavenly hosts, otherwise named the hierarchies. Mankind was directed to find its independence and become responsible for its history. In so doing, the angels, archangels, and all the company of heaven were overlooked, just as young people will turn against the guidance of their families. In the Protestant period of Christianity, there was a strong revulsion against acknowledging the ninefold company of the heavens, in favor of the experience of finding myself standing in the presence of God, as it were one-to-one. During this piece of history, people on earth were taken up with the process of finding the single self within themselves. From the other side, as it were, the company of heaven seemed to withdraw in favor of leaving the people of mankind to go their own way, to make their own mistakes and to become responsible for themselves. It was a feature within this process that whereas it has once been so that the plagues that beset men and women were God-willed, those which arise nowadays can again and again be traced to the mistaken behavior of people. Today, we bring our own plagues upon ourselves. The powers of the heavens will become known again to human souls when all those who are human encounter again the wonder of their humanity. In the book of Job, the first example in history is to be found of a man who has become self-conscious, questioning God. The divine answer in that sacred drama is heard when God shows to the questioner the divine wonders of nature. It is significant that in the psalm which God sings to Job in honor of the wonderful created world, man himself is not included among the wonders. Passing from ancient history to modern, the time has come when people need to ask about the wonder of themselves. How will this be found? Since as people we are not self-made, where are the powers that made us? When we realize that we are divinely created beings, we come to the hidden truth that the universe is filled with gods, working at the creation of man out of the will of God himself. They are members of his being who can create from his thoughts. In earthly life, being human, we have to work on ourselves. But the forces enabling us to do this are heaven-sent. They remind us that their activity in the universe has brought about the person that we are in this world whose origin is in the heavens. We live only one half of the cycle of our existence in independence here on earth. In the other half, we move through the heavens, surrounded and sustained by the wisdom of the gods. Every time we go to sleep, we touch again these spheres. Every time we wake up, we are returned to the life on earth where we can perform actions and experience the will to do. When we are born, we have this experience in a larger way. We come out of the divine wisdom prevailing in the universe into the place where we can find a will of our own. Fashioned by cosmic forces, created out of wisdom, it is in the body that we find the will to action. We awaken to our separate existence and discover responsibility. We have left our heavenly home to make our own way in the world here. Each one of us may feel glad to be born, reluctant. But all are faced with the same situation. Without what is given to us by the gods in the heavens, there would be no energies at our disposal. Without going into the condition of separation, there would be no mirror of ourselves in the deeds that we have done and the things that we have made. Moreover, man would be a creature of God, whereas by the will that he has come to call his own, he begins to share in the further creation of man's life with the angels, archangels, and all the company of heaven. Through the coming of Christ into the human form of Jesus, the revelation could be made known of God working within man, as he worked before in the wonders of nature. Job's question to God was not fully answered at the time. But in due course the answer came. Christ becoming man on earth made known that man's true purpose is to become godlike in his independence. As the Christ guides human souls through sleeping to waking, likewise he is the leader on the way through the gate of birth and out through the gate of death. Just as human souls are pilgrims on the way between birth and death here on earth, so they are pilgrims on the way to the temples of the stars between death and birth. The human person is one-sided before he is born and one-sided while he is here. He realizes himself as a whole when he acknowledges the cycle of death to birth and birth to death. Christ stands at the threshold between heaven and earth, guarding the pilgrimage of the individual soul, and likewise
listening to Talking Point from the Church's Fellowship for Psychical and Spiritual Studies. To find out more, please visit www.churchesfellowship.co.uk.